For me, it's the giant sloth. 130-plus sightings in 18 countries for over 200 years. Up to 5 captured individuals which escaped, casts of tracks, audio recordings, photos of claw marks, alleged hair and dung.
This is so cool. Any more info you can find? Please elaborate.
The Rockies has ground sloths, similar to giant sloths, but also different.
Out of sightings from Patagonia, Amazonia, the Yucatan, the Ozarks, Appalachia, and the Yukon, the Amazonian accounts are the best. David Oren pieced together a description of the Mapinguari in 1993, based on interviews with more than 100 claimed eyewitnesses. From their accounts, he described the Mapinguari as a man-sized animal, no more than 1 meter and 80 centimeters long, with long reddish fur, backwards feet, and a monkey-like face. Later, in 2001, after speaking with more witnesses and 7 hunters who claimed to have killed specimens, Oren was able to give a presumably more accurate description of the animal. According to his 2001 paper, the Mapinguari is a very heavy, powerfully built animal, up to 2 meters, 6 foot 6 inches tall when standing bipedally, which breaks the roots of trees with its steps. It is covered in long and coarse fur, which ranges in color from reddish to brownish to blackish, and has a muzzle similar to that of a horse or a burro, though shorter, which is armed with 4 peg-shaped canine teeth. Its formidable claws are shaped like those of the giant anteater, Myrmecophaga tridactyla, but are the size of those of the giant armadillo, Priodontes maximus. Its tail is short and broad, or large and thick. Additionally, Luis Jorge Salinas claimed that the animals he saw had humped backs, strange tortoise-like necks, and chests devoid of hair, which is also a feature of the Quilla Harara. According to most accounts, it can walk either quadrupedally or bipedally, but the bipedal gait is often described as unsteady. Salinas describes a Charlie Chaplin gait. It is said to be nocturnal and crepuscular, i.e., active at night and twilight, and feeds on vegetation including bacaba, Oenocarpus bacaba, and babasu palms, Atalea speciosa, which it twists to the ground and tears apart in order to feed on the palm heart and berry-like fruits. It is said to be migratory, descending from the Andean foothills around February and Acre, near the Peruvian border. Its tracks are found in the ground around vegetation even during the dry season, when the earth is baked hard. Its first call is a low roar reminiscent of thunder, while the other is a very loud, higher-pitched cry, just like a human shouting, but with a growl at the end. This second cry often impresses and terrifies people who claim to have heard it. Claimed eyewitness Inocencio, who initially mistook the cry for that of a man, described it as wild and dismal, horrible, deafening, and inhuman. Oren described a call heard by himself as being extremely strong and of steady pitch, lasting for up to 45 seconds and resembling jets flying over low. Grunts, growls, and groans are also sometimes described. A very strong and unpleasant smell is frequently described, compared to a mixture of feces and rotting flesh. Garlic vine, Mansoa alliacea, and a foetid peccary, or simply described as just the worst odor they ever smelled. The smell leaves people lightheaded and nauseous, or even renders them unconscious. Most famously, it is reputed to be invulnerable to bullets and arrows unless hit in the navel, the eyes, the mouth, or sometimes elsewhere on the head. This invulnerability is sometimes attributed to thick or crocodile-like skin, or to the animal's hair. Hunters who claim to have shot specimens say they used special solid lead shotgun slugs fired at the head, a special shot used for hunting tapirs fired at the navel from a .16 caliber shotgun, and all the bullets of a .38 caliber revolver emptied into the chest. David Oren has collected over 100 accounts of the Mapinguari or animals like it, and as of 2002 had interviewed 7 hunters who claimed to have shot specimens. 3 hunters claimed to have actually captured living Mapinguaris in quite recent times, but all 3 animals escaped because the men were unable to bear the stench. A group of Kanamari Indians living in the Rio Juruá Valley, claimed to have raised two infant ground sloths on bananas and milk after their mother was scared off by hunters. After some time, they progressed to feeding on foliage, but after 1 or 2 years, the unbearable smell of their skin prompted the Indians to release them. The Segami is a cryptid reported from the Peruvian Amazon near the Vilcabamba mountain range, described as a fearsome sloth-like animal. It is usually considered a regional name for the Mapinguari on account of its almost identical description. It is described as a cow-sized animal which can walk both quadrupedally and bipedally, with dark matted fur said to resemble the fibers surrounding the leaf stems of an Onocarpus batawa palm, and a snout similar to a giant anteater's. It is said to live in caves in the remote cloud and foothill forests, where it feeds on Cyclanthaceae plants and palm piths. The Mapinguari are terrified of it due to its reputedly aggressive behavior, and it has a number of alleged characteristics in common with the Mapinguari. It is said to be impervious to bullets, has a terrible roar, and supposedly generates an odor which stupefies or knocks out anyone who comes close to it. In 1997, anthropologist Glenn Shepard Jr. suggested to some Mapinguari who told him about the Segami that it might be a bear. The Mapinguari, who knew spectacled bears, Tremarctos ornatus, well, expressed great surprise and affirmed that the two animals are completely different. One of the tribe matter-of-factly told him that he had seen a Segami at Lima's Natural History Museum when he was a student, and when Shepard checked, he discovered that the museum had a diorama featuring a model of a giant ground sloth. However, the student had never seen the Segami himself and had previously assumed it to be mythical. To those who aren't interested, I'm sorry for the wall of text. The Uga is a bear-like cryptid reported from Ecuador. A Shuar source describes it as a bear-man hybrid with an odor strong enough to knock a grown man unconscious, which feeds on flower nectar and is not dangerous to man, leading to it formerly being hunted by the Shuar. A picture drawn by the Shuar who gave this description depicts the Uga as a man-like being with shaggy red hair on its head and back, a long tongue, and strongly hooked claws. A different source describes it as a gorilla-like monster which is dangerous, so much so that women and children fear to leave their houses during the night. However, because the Uga is too large to enter houses, they can kill it by spearing it from within their doors. A colleague of J. Richard Greenwell claimed to have seen a ground sloth outside a cave in Ecuador in the 1980s. It was described as a 10-feet-long animal with shaggy hair and a horse-like snout, and was capable of standing bipedally to browse on vegetation and walking quadrupedally. Several sightings of the Kita Harara have occurred on the Caritiana Reservation, especially near an area apparently known as the Cave of the Mapinguari, southwest of Kiowa. In one of the earliest reported sightings, a hunter named Valdemiro, who approached the cave, was startled by a terrifying cry, followed by the animal itself emerging from the cave. Valdemiro noticed that the animal balanced on the sides of its feet, holding its claws inwards. In 2006, a Caritiana from the village of Kiowa recounted several sightings or close encounters. It is frequently heard breaking down palm trees at night, and a Caritiana saw a giant sloth near a stream in a field near the village and shot it, but it didn't die. One once entered the village of Kiowa itself, prompting everyone to flee. A Caritiana hunter named Giovaldo claimed to have shot and injured one in 2003 or 2004. During Pat Spain's Animal Identity Parade interview with Giovaldo for Beast Man, the animals which he is shown on screen to have no reaction to are an African elephant, a Bengal tiger, a spectacled bear, a white rhinoceros, and a gorilla. He showed no recognition of the spectacled bear and thought the gorilla could be some sort of monkey. Giovaldo recognized the giant anteater and stated that the animal he had seen was much, much different, with the only slight similarity being in the arms. When an image of the ground sloth megalonyx was shown, Giovaldo unhesitatingly nodded and identified it as what he had seen, stating that it was kind of like that. I think that was the animal. I really think that looks like it. Its arms were just like that. One difference he noted was that the claws on what he saw were similar, but even larger other than that. It had the same body, the same arms, and the same face.
This one is less detailed due to it being a second-hand account. I didn't know the guy very well at the time, so I can't vouch for his trustworthiness, but he definitely seemed shaken up telling it to me. Be that guy, 23, ecology student, get opportunity for study abroad, fieldwork in Brazil, would be camping in the Amazon one night, staying another with a small tribe that worked with the university sometimes, then camping one more night on the way out. Took a day by ferry boat to get there, and one to get back. Rest of the work would be done at the university for a total of 2 weeks. Boat trip was fun. Drinking and dancing, almost got dick wet from Brazilian student but decide not to. Be of Colombian heritage, so speak Spanish. Hear some of the crew talking about if they should turn around but turn away as soon as they see him. Next morning they reach the place they'll disembark from. Sorry, they actually stayed in the village 2 nights. My bad. First day of hiking he said was hard, but incredible. Said it was a budding ecologist's wet dream, with so much plant and animal life. As the sun began to set, he remembers hearing what sounded like an elephant trumpeting from very far away. Suddenly, there are guns in the crew's hands, but no one will say what is going on. They hike until it is dark, and then make camp. Most people in Inos provided by the university. Crew sleeps on pads on the ground with guns. Guy hears the sound in the middle of the night, but he said it sounded much closer, maybe only a mile. From inside the Eno, he hears Portuguese from the crew, so he can understand hardly anything. Mapinguari more than once. Eventually he falls asleep, wakes up and some crew is gone. Turns out they went ahead because a tree had fallen somewhere up the trail and had to be cut up to clear the way for gear porters. Trail gets thinner, and eventually they reach the village, which is abuzz with activity. Men, some in shorts, others in native clothes, have spears and bows walking around. Turns out there was an animal attack the night before, and a little girl was killed by what was likely a jaguar. Damn shame. WebM. Small funeral for the girl in both Christian and native style. Hear more Mapinguari. Ask head professor what that means. Apparently it's some forest spirit/animal that is usually docile but very dangerous if it perceives a threat, kind of like a rhino. Some natives and guides think it was responsible for the girl's death. Yeah, right, superstitious heathens. Hear odd sound all throughout the first day at different distances and positions. Natives are wigged out. All of them inside before dark, instead of partying as planned. Walking around the village, see that they have a small crop of corn and other things off the one side of the village. Looks like something out of a storybook. Beautiful night sky, quaint jungle village, nice little farm, huge hairy thing eating the corn. What? A quadruped standing on its hind legs is using its claws to cut off the ears of corn and is eating them whole. Has a head like a cross between a bear and a horse. Guy tries to back away quietly, but trips and falls on a rock. Thing snaps its head around and looks at him. After about a minute, it lets out an ungod fully loud bellow and fucks off into the jungle. Guy promptly gets up and tacticals to his assigned hut. Next morning, the villagers are freaking out, saying it was a Mapinguari again. Crew and students decide things are getting weird and leave a day early rather than risk an animal attack. Rest of the way back to the boat, there is no sign of it, but they keep hearing the sound.
Got some OC here, way back from sophomore year in high school when I was living up in Massachusetts. Be me, be 16. Parents are super libtards. After much convincing, get them to let me buy a bow. Beautiful 45-pound recurve. I love it. Always feel like a badass shooting with it. Become a pretty good shot over about 6 months. It's not uncommon for me to grab a knife and sneak out at night after they're asleep to go for a walk in the woods. One night, I decide to go grab my bow and go out with that. Sling it over my shoulder and shimmy down a drain pipe. I'm on the 2nd floor. I am a commando.tiff. Get down to the ground, unsling it, knock an arrow, and start walking. It's a combination deciduous and coniferous woods, but there isn't a lot of brush because of how little light comes through to the ground. It's dark as pitch under the trees. Allow time for my eyes to adjust, as I always feel uneasy using a flashlight this late at night. Hear a noise. Bring bow up. Owl swoops by. Holy shit, that's cool. And another. God damn it, this is fucking awesome. Then a robin. Wait, what? After a few moments, it seems like every bird in the forest is flying away in the same direction. Hear some rabbits and deer in the distance doing the same. I wonder what they'd all run from. And at this time of night, so curious. My curiosity overcomes my common sense, and I decide to check it out. Walk slowly, constant 360 threat scan. Suddenly hear a loud snuffling sound coming from this big briar thicket that I hadn't seen before. Figure it's a boar or something. Still don't want to bother it. Arrow back in the quiver, bow over my back. Climb up a nearby pine, get as high up as I can. Looking down into the briar patch. Suddenly it looks like the boar is coming out. Big patches of briar are getting torn apart or pulled out of the way. Something comes out of the briar. That's no boar.png. It's about 5 to 6 feet long from nose to tail. Looks like a cross between a boar, an ape, and a bear. Long tapered snout, fat nose at the end, really shaggy hair on head, covered most of the eyes from what I could see. Really buff shoulders, like incredibly big. Smaller lower body, sort of hoof feet on the back. Front legs / arms looked like gorilla arms, really buff and almost humanoid hands on the front. Really long claws on the front. Shiny, too. It moves sort of like an ape, too. That weird shamble 2-legged walk and the knuckle walk. I'm shaking at this point, trying to figure out what the fuck this thing is and if it can climb trees. It makes a noise. Sounds like the snuffling sound boars make. Suddenly, is anyone there? The most gravelly, deepest voice I had ever heard. I can help you. It looks around, snuffles for a bit, especially at the base of the tree, then starts to wander off. I've been shitting myself this whole time and slowly pulling my bow off my back. Nock an arrow and get ready to shoot. Dead twig goes snap on the tree. The thing turns its head instantly. Thought it had broken its neck or something. Instantly starts circling my tree, snuffling like mad. I take a deep breath. Scooch out farther on the branch so I can get a clear shot. Draw, touch anchor point, aim, release. I aimed well, hit it right in the head. Almost directly where the eye was, I thought. Hear a sound like metal hitting stone. The thing snuffles a bit more, sounded like laughing, and gradually wanders off again. I stayed in that tree until sunrise the next morning. Barely managed to get back home before my parents came in to wake me up. They wondered why I looked so tired.
Help my fuck, I've got one from just last year. Stalking Innowoods, Arkansas Ozarks, with some new gear I'd been saving for months. B-23. Boots, tack vest, my fuck, even a milsurp gas mask. It was like Christmas. Being where I was and wanting to field test some personal prototypes, I had my nugget on hand. Wouldn't do much against the big bears, but it'd ruin any snake or stray dog or cougar's day right to hell. Had a couple strippers and 2 clipazines I built and wanted to field test in my pouches, some rolled-up targets stuck in my loops, and a light complement of survival gear. Compass, topo map, thermal blanket, spare undies, extra bullet, MREs, canteen and camelback, amphetamines, bug spray, rope, spikes, mallet, e-tool, shower powder, baby powder, TP, the works. I've done nothing heretical to my nugget, I swear. Clipazines are what I call the jerry-rigged magazines I'd custom-built from old cannibalized mags and sheet metal. They fit right onto any nugget's feed if you pull the floor plate out. I've also done some Heinlein-esque mods to my gas mask, an airtight, at least now, water feed. But I digress. Basically practicing for the inevitable commie, capitalist, Jew, Goyim, Beaner, Dindu, Cracker, Chinese, Korean, Canadian, Shtoran invasion. I was having a fucking great time romping around the woods, playing with my FOV in the mask, testing the reliability of the clipazines, generally having fun. I wandered next to a creek bed and decided it was time to practice my guerrilla tic-tacs. It was late summer/early fall, so no danger of getting my gear wet in the non-existent stream. Shit was in more danger of water damage from my sweat. After triple-checking my safety, I proceeded to do a series of scree slides and uphill hustles in full survivalist gear. Needless to say, I got winded right quick. I stood panting in that dry stream bed and decided to check my position with my topo map and compass so I could set a course for home. In the middle of orienteering myself, I caught wind of a smell. In B4, blood and copper, it wasn't. At first, I assumed it was sweaty famunda, but the funk quickly evolved into something fucking worse. A dark undercurrent of rot, deep notes of animal musk, a bassy score of raw garbage punctuated by garlicky timpani, and a thick black score of something between skunk and rotting onion sludge, a symphony of stench. And the conductor decided to skip the adagio and drive the opening movement straight into the scherzo, because that shit was getting stronger. I went into straight operating mode, popped an addy from my pouch for extra focus, pulled the clipazine from my nugget. It seemed to be working fine, but if I was going to have to shoot something, I'd prefer not to have any risk of jamming. I gagged and nearly puked up that addy tab. The smell was that strong at this point. Whatever the source was, it was definitely mobile and getting closer. Fuck it. I pulled my mask up from around my neck and pulled it over my face. It helped slightly, but my fucking dumbass waterline wasn't 100% airtight around the joint. I walked cautiously and slowly along the creek bed to where the slope was shallowest, listening for twig snap or animal sounds from above. I definitely heard something shuffling around up there, and it sounded bigger than what my nugget was up for. It was a near-constant snuffle grunt and sloppy, uncoordinated crunching around bark and leaves. That mixed with the smell in mind immediately jumped to big bear. Rabid big bear. Let me tell you about Ozark big bears, straight from my dad's mouth. Dad's lived in the Ozarks for 58 years, and in that time only two things have managed to shake him: the challenges of fatherhood and the big bears. According to him, the native black bears were hunted to near extinction between the 40s and 50s. To correct this, the ANRC, NRCS, and Arkansas Fish and Game Commission released 250 bears into the Ozark and Ouachita Mountains. Their website insists that they were all black bears. My dad insists that this is bullshit. According to him, more than a few of the bears released into the Ozarks had been brown bears, and that they had interbred with the few remaining locals and the reintroduced blacks. Thanks to a little phenomenon known as hybrid vigor, the resulting offspring were bigger and meaner than their parents, and, fuck me, were also fertile. When I asked him to prove it, he simply left the summer porch, went upstairs and came back with a manila folder labeled BB. He pulled out a couple Polaroids and asked me to take a look. I saw a big, black and brown something rooting around behind a clothesline. Dad directed my attention to the clothesline about 50 feet away from us, strung between two poles, about 5 feet 6 inches off the ground. The same clothesline in the picture. The something's shoulder was about a fart's length under the line, despite being in the goddamn background. I looked through the other pictures, one of them rooting in the trash, another barely concealed by trees, all of them slightly shaky. Detail was hard to come by, but I was convinced. My dad told me two things about how to avoid getting my shit shredded by the big bears. One, big bears are stupid as shit, something to do with them being hybrids. This makes them more dangerous than other bears because they ain't afraid of you. This also makes them smell like shit, and you'll smell them coming a mile off. If you smell a big bear, get inside and get upstairs, but take the shotgun first and some deer slugs. And two, if you do see a big bear and you ain't at home or you ain't got a shotgun loaded with slugs, hide. Up a tree if you can. They're faster than you and it ain't no use running. I tell you all this because after 23 years I'd finally managed to prove my dad wrong about something. Well, half wrong. There's something in the Ozarks that match my dad's pictures of big bears, but whatever they are, they sure as fuck aren't bears. Back to the woods. I would have stayed in that creek bed and waited for the something to fuck off on its business, but the light was already slanting through the trees, and as bad as my dad made big bears sound, I sure as tits didn't want to be stuck with a goddamn rabid one after dark. I instead opted to climb up the opposite edge of the creek bed. Had to scramble over some big rock outcroppings and half stand, half lean against the slope of a hill. but I figured that if anything, that would be one more layer of protection against the something. I had gotten a few glimpses of the something over my shoulder as I climbed, but this was my first good look at it. I just fucking stared. Like I said in my previous post, this wasn't a fucking bear. It was bear-like, but not a bear. I've been into sci-fi my entire life, Heinlein-esque mods to my gas mask, and even got Barlow's Guide to Extraterrestrials from my awesome late stepmom, so when I saw the something for the first time, my fucking nerd brain immediately went, oh, a Sulador. Pick related. Except it wasn't. It looked like a Sulador, a grizzly bear, and a sloth had a three-way on top of a garbage heap to make it. It had a long prognathouse snout like a stubby-ass trunk, big angular shoulders, feet that looked like manhole covers covered in dirty matted fur, and a body like a furry blimp. Its fur was the same charcoal black / day glow brown I saw in the pictures, and full of mats and clumps of dirt. I mean, I fucking stared at it, drinking in the details, trying to make fucking sense of what I was looking at for a solid 2.5 minutes, and it somehow hadn't noticed me. Jesus, these things were dumb. I remember feeling a twinge of relief. If it hadn't noticed me trying to scrabble out of a rocky gully, it won't notice me sneaking away. That was when I farted. The something stopped, my breath stopped, my heart stopped. The only sound in those woods was my fucking fart echoing, and the sound of my nose blistering under the something's odoriferous assault. Like slow-mo, the thing turned its head, looked back at me, sniffed the air, and stood up. It had been shuffling around, crouched low to the ground the entire time. What I had thought were shoulder blades were its fucking elbows. It could tie its shoes without bending down, but its paws probably would have crushed its Air Jordans to bits. They were like trash can lids. It sniffed the air again, and coughed / barked like it was asking me a goddamn question. Gorp? I swear on me, Mum, that's what it fucking sounded like. Gorp. Be me. Be dumb fuck who doesn't listen to his dad. Be awkward cringe lord who fucking farts when he's trying to sneaky breaky away from a goddamn gorp. Aim for center mass. Fire. The bullet didn't thwack into the gorp because, hey, if you're gonna die, might as well give your killer a stupid name in your head, right? As much as it thwumphed. There was a puff of dirt and hair when it thwumphed, and, bless my luck, the gorp flinched from the impact. Wait for blood. I guess that gorps are so covered in nasty flea-ridden hair mats that over time their poor hygiene gives them natural body armor because that thing didn't fucking bleed. What it did do was rear up and gorth at me, a low growl that my colon decided was a warning because it was producing bricks enough to construct a barricade. I worked the bolt and fired another shot, this time at its ugly sloth bear, elephant face. This time it thwacked. So did the dirt a dozen feet to the fucker's left because it ricocheted off of its fucking skull. The gorp just stood there staring at me, like it was too dumb to realize it could have stood in the stream bed and grabbed me by the face while I pelted it with useless bullet and shit myself. I yelled at it and fired a third shot in any direction at all, trying to scare it off. The gorp or gorth or big bear or whatever it was dropped to all fours, lurched toward me once, then did a 360 and shuffled away. I stood there until the sky turned from blue to orange before I snapped out of it and tactically retreated back home. When I got back, I told my dad everything. I probably should have mentioned that I was visiting him for a few days. Oops. He could probably smell Big Bear on me, and it's no use lying to him. When I got to the part about what the big bears really were, he refused to believe me. Then he got pissed at me. Then he locked the doors and camped out upstairs for the rest of our visit. I had to fucking bring him beer from downstairs when we wanted to shoot the shit. The weird thing is, as scared as he was and as weirded out as I was at seeing my dad as spooked as a kid who's seen a skeleton, I wasn't scared. I remember that very clearly. I wasn't scared. I guess you could say I was too interested to be scared. If I was scared, I would have just bolted, and I'd probably be typing this from inside a year-old gorp turd. If I had a guess, it'd probably be that the fucking Adderall I had popped kept me from switching into run home scared to mama's tit mode. Well, /K/ you probably stopped reading 2 posts ago, but that's how I met a gorp and lived.
Have you considered that what you saw might have been a megatherium or giant ground sloth? They got pretty big. Its top size was 20 feet, had long arms, and their skin was full of interlocking bones that would have been like natural chainmail. As for the stumpy-ass trunk, It may have either evolved one over time or might have had one all along. Soft tissues don't fossilize, and skin impressions of the face have never been found. They lived in South America as recently as 10,000 years ago, so it's not that much of a stretch that a branch population could exist in the Ozarks today. Some pictures have surfaced that some people think indicate that giant ground sloths still exist in the Appalachians, a habitat not so different from the Ozarks.
Here's the Virginia ground sloth picture. It kind of reminds me of your description.
Just got back from the store and holy shit, Anon. My fuck. That's a gorp. That's a gorp. If you slapped on a dinky tapir trunk, stretched its arms out, and fed it till it swelled up like a curvy land whale, it'd be a gorp. Help my fuck, Anon. Like, I'm a pretty paleo nerd science brain /K/commando, but that never fucking occurred to me. For the last year or so, I've been convinced that I saw a weird Native American spirit monster, or an escaped government project, or one of those fucking skinwalkers that /X/ is always fapping on about, but holy tits. There are goddamned giant ground sloths living in the Ozarks. I gotta call my dad.